think this is all about? You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
Howdy, gang. Not sure how many people we're going to have tonight. I was hoping to have Chris join me, but he may be either wiped out from work or doing something with the family or doing something with his own channel. I have not heard from him today. I did send him a message. We can always hope that he may pop in here at some point in time. Um, I maybe should have sent him the link, but I didn't want to put any pressure on him and make him feel like he, had to come on here or anything like that. So, it's probably going to be just me, but I'm hoping that maybe some people will come in the chat and they'll talk about their own experiences with horror collecting and all the insanity that goes along with basically collecting anything. Not just horror collecting, but any sort of collecting. It becomes a type of a obsessive drive to collect anything and everything related to what you're interested in. Okay, so maybe we'll have some people in here, maybe not. Maybe Chris will join me, maybe not. It's probably going to be a pretty short stream if nobody shows up and nobody's talking about anything because, I can only talk so long. I mean, I could talk longer, but, after a while I start rambling and going around in circles, and that's not good for anybody. Um, but I want to get a few housekeeping things out of the way and also give y'all an update on some things that have been, well, one thing in particular that's been going on with me and Steve. And that is our dog Brink. Over the last few months, we discovered that well, first it was a tumor in her liver that we were told, they didn't think it was cancer, didn't biopsy it or anything like that. And it's basically, or it was, they've taken it out, but it was a stalk shape, just like a celery stalk. But as time went on, and I don't understand this, I never will understand this. And I think I need to plug in this light again so I'm not in total darkness. Steve tells me all the time that I need to have more light back here when I'm doing these things, and almost every time I forget to add a little light. I guess I figured you guys don't really want to see me, but look like it's making as much light. I don't want to make that lamp fall down because boy, it has fell down before. Um, and all of a sudden, I am freaking burning up out here. I don't know if it's hormones or what. Who knows? I didn't think I was going to have to turn that on during this stream because the weather has cooled off for the end of August. But anyway, back to my story. For whatever reason, when a CT scan was run on Brink, she had an ultrasound and a CT scan. All of the results were not shared with me and Steve. Why, I don't know. I will forever not know. But it turned out that this celery stalk shaped tumor was not the only one in Brink and not the only one in her liver. And so there were two smaller ones, I think, in her liver, and also a nodule in her lung. Now, they're not going to do anything with the one in her lung. They told Steve today that there was one close to her gallbladder, but they couldn't take it out. But they biopsied. And I said, I don't understand what good if that does turn out to be cancer, what good does that do us or do Brink when they say they can't remove it? Which I don't understand why they can't remove it to begin with. Not that I want Brink to have more surgery, but a gallbladder, as far as I knew, I thought a gallbladder could be removed in a person. So why can't it be removed in a dog? I don't get it. But after a bunch of wrestling with emotions and everything else between me and Steve, it was decided that the best thing for Brink would be to have another CT scan, which was what was suggested, to see if any of these tumors have grown. And if they had, they would not have done surgery because it would have been too risky. Also, once they sliced poor Brink open today, they were also checking to see how integrated the blood vessels were in her liver and this tumor, because there was, the threat of major bleeding. And if they had found a bunch of integrated blood vessels, they would not have done the surgery either. So it was determined that everything was okay to do the surgery. They called Steve a little bit before 2. He told them to proceed with the surgery. And we got a call about an hour and a half later. The doctor said it might be 2 hours. And they said that they got the stalk-shaped tumor out. And that she would be in the ICU section of the animal hospital until she come out of the anesthesia. And they suggested also that we leave her there overnight in case there was some bleeding, then they could, fix it right then and there, right? Because there are people watching her all night. So we are without our baby Brink for tonight anyway. And I really wanted Steve to go get her tomorrow morning when they call him around 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. But Steve said, well, I hate to take off more work. So he's going to go pick her up in the afternoon after he gets off from work. So that's our tale of our baby girl Brink. And what she's been going through, and subsequently what we've been going through too. But we'll move on to a little bit, more pleasant stuff. As you guys and gals know that come to a lot of my streams and watch a lot of my videos and all that good stuff, you know that I have a shop, Deadites on Deck, at deaditesondeck.com. If you remember the name of my channel, you can certainly remember the name of the shop. I do have a few items that are available that you can get right now, but they are not up on the shop site just yet. But you can still get them. And how can you get them? Well, you can send the money and your name, your address, color choice if it's a t-shirt, and size. If it's a Nighty Nightmare sleep shirt, right now they're in one color, pink with heather gray sleeves. But the t-shirts, I can do any color now, even black. I have a process in place where I can make, or produce the sublimation images. I can't even type. Can't walk and chew bubble gum at the same time, dang it. So I have that process in place. So if you want a black shirt, if you want a red shirt, if you want a violet shirt, hot pink, whatever color is your pleasure, I can put an image on there. So first of all, the Nighty Nightmare sleep shirts. Yes, sir, I primarily market them for women. But who am I to say that a man might not want one? Okay? Or he might not want to buy one for his lady. Okay? So we have a few different designs that are available right now. You can get the Driller Killer from the original Slumber Party Massacre, Russ Thorn, the original Driller Killer. You can get Freddy Krueger, you can get Michael Myers, you can get Jason Voorhees. And for you Ozzy Osbourne fans, and trust me, folks, I am not, I feel like I should say this because even though there's a lot of people selling Ozzy Osbourne merchandise, I don't want anybody that's a fan of Ozzy Osbourne or otherwise to feel like I'm trying to cash in on his passing, because that is the furthest from the truth, folks. It really is. And I don't want anybody to think that or feel that way. But I do have a special design with Ozzy Osbourne, with a cartoon Ozzy Osbourne on it, surrounded by some of age ladies. And he's in his black pajamas. He's got a pillow that says, Ozzy came to my slumber party. And the other ones, the Freddy one, the Jason one, the Michael Myers one, the Driller Killer one, they all not necessarily have it on the pillow, but they have it somewhere on the shirt, the text, the Driller Killer came to my slumber party, Freddy Krueger came to my slumber party, and, so on and so forth. So how can you get one of these sleep shirts? Okay. As I said, right now, they're just one color, pink with heather gray sleeves. So if you send $30 plus $6 shipping, and that doesn't matter if you buy one sleep shirt, 5 sleep shirts, 10 sleep shirts, 100 sleep shirts, it's still $6. Okay. I'm not going to up the price just because you get more than one sleep shirt. Okay. I promise. So what else do I have? Well, we've got some new t-shirt designs. I'm going to have Ozzy the Wonder Squirrel soon, but I don't have them just yet. But I do have Spooky Dog and Sebastian meat shirts. And I have 2 designs available right now. One, of course, is an Ozzy Osbourne design. And again, not trying to cash in on the passing of Ozzy Osbourne. These are mainly, tributes, to Mr. Osbourne. Okay, so you could get that design, or hey, Gory Tiger, or right now you can get Spooky Dog meets Robert England. Okay. And those shirts, as well as other shirts, I do already have on deaditesondeck.com, are $20 plus $6 shipping. And again, it doesn't matter if you buy one t-shirt, 5 t-shirts, 10 t-shirts, 100 t-shirts, it's still only $6 shipping. Now, where else can you get that, folks? I don't hear a lot of people offering flat rate shipping. So for those, if you send $20 plus $6 shipping to my PayPal email address that is in the chat, and please include for these your size that you need and the color. Again, I can do all colors, even black. Okay. All right. So I'm still not sure if I'm going to be doing any streams or anything tomorrow night. It's still kind of up in the air. Thursday, I should be doing another They're All Messed Up. Friday, I'm not sure about a Friday Foolish. I haven't gotten confirmation from Candace. But if we don't do a Friday Foolish, then I'll try to plug in some kind of stream or video or something for you guys. I do have a couple of Highway to Hells. I promise they will be coming up soon. The more recent one was where me and Steve went to the Skyline Drive-In in Shelbyville, Indiana, and they had a screening of Trick or Treat with live commentary by Mark Skippy Price. That's how he kind of is known, as Mark Skippy Price. But he also played Eddie Weinbauer in the 1986 rock horror film Trick or Treat. And I got to meet Mark Price, and me and Steve got a couple of pictures taken with him, and he was really super nice and sweet and all that. And so if you ever get a chance to meet Mark Price and you haven't met him, please, I'm telling you, it's a very good experience to meet Mark Price. So we had a good time. We were very tired when we got home. It was after midnight before we made it back into Louisville. So the other one is 2 or so weeks ago, Steve and I went to the local AMC movie theater here in Louisville and watched Weapons. And I need to get that one out as well. I'm sorry, guys and gals, I've been a little lax with getting that stuff out as of late. I've got some Ozzy the Wonder Squirrel animated shorts that should be coming up. They're safe for your kiddos to watch, okay? So I know a lot of my stuff is not really geared towards kids, but Ozzy the Wonder Squirrel will be safe for your children to watch. Trust me on this. I also want to get a few more Spooky Dog and Sebastian meet episodes in the can. I have one with Ozzy Osbourne that people have really watched, and I thoroughly appreciate that. Ozzy the Wonder Squirrel probably will at some point be meeting his namesake in the Adventures of Ozzy the Wonder Squirrel. That's what I'm going to call it, folks. So we got all that coming up, plus a watch along on Saturday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It looks like it's going to be for Black Roses, but you can still vote. I'm going to let people vote on up until maybe the day of. So if you haven't voted and you want to get your vote in, the choices are Black Roses, Rocktober Blood, and Hard Rock Zombies. So make sure you get your votes in now for your choice or your pick for the watch along for this Saturday, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, so now let's get into this horror collecting. Now, as I said earlier, if I don't have, a lot of people coming in here and wanting to talk about horror collecting, there's only so much I can talk about by myself. So it'll probably be a pretty short show. And although I wanted Chris to be on here because it's a lot of fun to have Chris on here, and Chris is very knowledgeable about all things horror, and he's definitely very knowledgeable about horror collecting and just collecting in general. But we can't always have what what we want, like the Rolling Stones song. You can't always get what you want, right? So it looks like I'm going to be winging it alone. But if anybody wants to jump in there and in the chat and talk about your own experiences with horror collecting, or we'll expand it. If you're not really that much into horror collecting, you could talk about vinyl collecting. You could talk about stamp collecting. I mean, I'm laughing, but I mean, I'm serious, because to me, that same obsessive drive that keeps us buying the horror stuff, it's the same, I feel like, in other areas of collecting. Okay. So, growing up, I did not do a lot of collecting. I'll just be totally honest. Um, I might get something that was all the rage at the time. Like I got a Cabbage Patch kid or a Cabbage Patch baby when I was a kid and stuff like that. But it wasn't really, I loved horror movies from a early age, and my parents are very good parents, by the way, but they fostered, especially my mom and my aunt, my mom's sister Sandy, fostered my love of horror films. Dad did to some extent, but he wasn't so into them like my mom and my aunt. And growing up in a small town, when you would mention horror films, most people would look at you like you put your clothes on sideways. It wasn't until I got older and started going to horror conventions, which, by the way, I didn't start going to horror conventions until I was in my 30s, folks. In my 30s. A lot of people start early doing this stuff, and they start early with the collecting and all of that. So when I was in my 30s and I really started going to a lot of horror conventions, that's where I found my crew. That's where I found the like-minded people. I didn't find too many of those like-minded people back home. And it wasn't that they thought horror films were evil per se or anything like that. It's just that they had not, most people from my little bitty hometown hadn't been exposed to a lot of them. I mean, they were around. They were in the video rental stores and stuff like that. But I guess it just never occurred to them to, try some of these out. But I grew up in a household that kind of fostered that love of horror films. And from an early age, not too young, but still at early age, some parents would probably frown upon that. You let your kid watch that at that age. But mom and dad never really restricted me to what I could watch. And a lot of the stuff that I watched early on was edited for television, right? Around Halloween time, they would have, these horror movies, and usually it was the same ones year after year after year. So it was like Friday the 13th Part 3, and it was Halloween 2. I didn't see the first Halloween until many, many years after, like years of watching Halloween 2 on television. So when my family finally got a VCR in the probably, let's say, late 80s, we were kind of late adopters in the Estes household of a VCR. And then that progressed later to getting a satellite dish. One of the small ones, mind you. I know Steve's family rented a large satellite dish, and so he got his taste of a satellite dish when he was younger too. Also, visiting my granny. My granny had cable, and that was the holy grail. You know, we could watch so much stuff. You know, if nobody else was in Granny and Granddaddy's den watching anything, I can't even remember, or I can't even begin to count how many times me and Heather would hole up in that den and watch not only horror movies, but you know, we watched The Legend of Billie Jean. I have fond memories of The Legend of Billie Jean, and I think the main reason why is that nostalgia, because that was such a golden time for me and Heather. And you know, the doors were wide open basically as far as entertainment. And you know, you had shows like Tales from the Dark Side and stuff like that. And I remember, you know, one summer Heather coming over to spend the night or spend the week with me, and us watching that episode, A Case of the Stubborns of Tales from the Dark Side. And I will never, ever forget that. And so some people might be like, well, how can you have fond memories about horror movies and stuff? It was just the feeling you got. If you liked horror movies and you liked horror television shows, um, it just was normal to you, right? If you didn't grow up in that kind of environment, or there were whisperings around, oh, you don't want to watch that, that'll scare you, da, 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 da. Then no, you were not going to be introduced to that stuff because you wouldn't have been allowed. And, you know, who am I to tell somebody that their parents were wrong for not letting their kids watch horror movies? I mean, my parents just chose to let me experience that. And apparently they knew their daughter well enough that they knew what I could handle and what I couldn't. Now, did they let me watch everything? No. I mean, there was, you know, there were exceptions. I Spit on Your Grave being one. But as many of you that have seen I Spit on Your Grave from 1978, you know that that is not a standard horror film. This is an assault and revenge film. But I didn't know that. You know, I was just hearing, you know, guys being cut up with boat motors and stuff like that and screaming and carrying on. And I thought I was missing the greatest horror movie ever made. Now, many moons later, when I got old enough to see it for myself, I realized, oh, you know, this was not a horror film. This is what's called an exploitation film. Okay. So there's kind of a difference there. Last House on the Left, that was something that I didn't watch until much later. But so I kind of grew up in a household that kind of embraced the horror movie. In general, I mean, my mom was always into vampires and stuff like that. And she used to be into the slasher films, not so much now. Is she in the slasher films? Now she prefers maybe a haunted house story, a ghost story, right? She kind of grew out of that slasher movie phase of her life. But there was a time when my mom just loved that stuff and loved vampire films. In fact, when she was a young girl, she used to put on the, you know, the fake vampire teeth, and she'd have the fake blood, and she'd run around scaring her sister saying, I want to suck your blood, or I want to bite your neck, and all that stuff. So some people might think that's silly, but I mean, my mom also grew up in an environment where she was, you know, my granny always said, oh, you shouldn't be watching that stuff, you know, that's going to scare you. But and she always kind of looked at me kind of strangely when I started wearing the horror t-shirts and stuff like that. She, you know, but of course when my granny got older and she was in the nursing home, the first time I colored my hair, when I got my nose piercing, and all that. She said, God love my granny. Um, she First she asked me why I wanted to color my hair like that. Why didn't I just want to keep it the natural color? And then she said, "Why you want to tear up your face like that?" Talking about my nose ring. But I love my granny. I will forever love my granny, and she's no longer with us. So I cherished every moment that I was around her. Um, but um, you know, a lot of times there's not a lot of middle ground with horror. Some people just hate. I mean, hate. And you might say, well, Dana, hate's a strong word. There are some people out there that hate horror films. They wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. And that's their right. If you don't like something and you don't want to watch it, then I say, all the power to you, Mr. or Mrs. But I enjoy them. The only time I have a problem is when people want to have crusades against horror movies. The same way I don't like it when they want to have crusades against, you know, rock and roll music or anything like that. And they want to tell people, "Oh, you're going to hell for that stuff," and that's evil, and that. First of all, those kind of people don't know the first thing about it because they shielded themselves from it. They only think they know about it, right? But somebody that just says, I don't like horror movies or I hate horror movies, but they leave you alone and let you do what you want, I don't have a problem with that because you can't make everybody like the same things. I mean, that's what makes the world go round, right? Um, that people like different things. But it's always good when you can find your crew, your gang that you can hang around with. And I don't mean bad connotations behind gang, but I felt like I had found my crew, even though I was in my 30s when I started going to horror conventions on a regular basis. That's how I met Steve. Was going to these horror conventions. Had I not went to those horror conventions, had I not hung out with the Dead Pit guys, CK and Uncle Bill, and hung around with that group at that time, I would have never met Steve. And now I'm married to Steve. We've been married 12 years. At the beginning of August, we have been married 12 years. And, I would have never met him. I would have never fallen in love with him had I not been in these same areas that he was. So, and I still have friends, close friends that I met through those circles, including Candace and Chris, who I'm really, really super close with. Candace and Chris are like a brother and a sister to me. They mean that much to me. But y'all are probably thinking, what is she going to talk about her history of horror? Well, no, but I think I should give a little background on how I came to collect certain things horror related. So when I got a job, and I mean a job, I had jobs when I was a kid, picking blackberries and getting $5 a gallon for blackberries and stuff like that. Kids now say, what? You only got $5? What in the world? But that was a lot of money for me back then. Working in the tobacco fields for my papa, and he paid good. But I'm talking about my first real, adult job. First, I was washing dishes in a local restaurant, and then thankfully I got a nice, clean, tidy office-like job at the local public library where I ended up working for 17 years. My first 6 years I was part-time, and then the rest of those years I was full-time. And I loved the library. I would spend any free moment I could in the library looking at books and wanting to check out books. And when I first went in there, I never dreamed I'd be working there. So when, especially when I got the library job, I started to want to buy movies on DVD at that point in time. I had a handful of VHS. I still have a handful of VHS. But it became easier, to buy those beloved horror films that you grew up watching, because now they were out on DVD. Most of them were reasonably priced. It wasn't quite like it is now, where you've got the boutique labels and stuff like that, where they ratchet up the price and all that. So my first little foray into horror collecting was with the films. And at one time I had a fair amount of VHS. I know I said a handful, but when I first started the VHS horror collecting, I had a fair amount of them. And then as DVD came to the forefront, I kind of whittled those down to a handful of them. And then we had Blu-ray, and now we have 4K. And so me and Steve didn't jump on the 4K bandwagon right away because mainly couldn't afford it. But then I was able to get us a 4K player, a 4K TV, and all that stuff. And so Steve and I started buying the 4K movies. But I guess my first love as far as horror collecting had to have been the films. And I just was ravenous. I would, people will probably call this foolhardy and stupid. But I can't even begin to tell you how many movies, horror related movies, that I just blind bought just because the plot synopsis sounded good. And, occasionally I'd get burned. But more often than not, they turned out to be pretty good films. I discovered Girls Night Out that way. It sounded like a cool little slasher movie. I hadn't watched it before, not even in my video rental days. And so I just took a chance on it. And I absolutely loved it. And I love it to this day. Now, there may be detractors of Girls Night Out. It's entirely possible. But I had a ton of movies. And it was growing and growing and growing. And I know you guys and gals out there that collect movies of any kind, whether it's horror or comedy, drama, whatever, or if you collect a mixture. Actually, nowadays I collect a mixture of them. I have some comedies, I have some dramas. A big part of my collection is still horror. Steve's collection, you can see most of his collection is back behind me, but I have a shelf over here. I have a shelf there, and some of those in the middle there are actually mine, instead of Steve's. They're in the middle on the lower part there. But I still love to collect movies. But, something that I've heard a lot of people say over the past few years that collect or have collected physical media in the past is that I'm running out of space. And I hear you, folks. I hear you. But I have this problem. I have this problem where I have to have physical, tangible, something I can touch. I'm going to be completely lost if everything goes to complete digital and there is no physical media anymore. People say it's coming. I hope not for a while. And no matter how much room it takes up, I still like being able to hold something physical in my hand, being able to take a disc out and put it in the player, being able to get all the goodies that come with some of these packages, these collector's editions, these limited editions, all of that. You get the booklets and the soundtracks and what have you. So I'm really, if it ever all goes away, I'm really going to miss physical media. Now, there are some people that swear by having stuff in the cloud. You don't need physical stuff. You're going to run out of room, and then what are you going to do? I do try to replace stuff. Like if I have a Blu-ray and I get a 4K, generally I try to get rid of the Blu-ray. But something I don't do, and right or wrong, um, stupid or smart, I refuse to get rid of my Blu-rays until I have a 4K in my hand. Now, my buddy CK, he will tell me, and he's right. I'm sure he's right that you better sell those off before the 4K actually hits because people will pay more money for it. I have no doubt in the world that he's correct on that. But I just cannot part with my Blu-rays until I have a replacement, you know. So I guess I'm going to always lose money that way. um, but I don't get nearly the amount of movies as I used to. When I was living with my parents, and I didn't have as many responsibilities, financial and otherwise, um, I I literally would get on deep discount, and I would get these big boxes of movies in. Next day shipping. I was insane. I was insane, folks. I was spending an ungodly amount on movies and on that fast shipping and all of that. I think this was in the days before Prime and Amazon Prime and stuff like that, and getting 2 day shipping or 1 day shipping, or in some cases same day shipping. Um, but I would get like next day air or something like that. And yeah, folks, I was using credit cards and I shouldn't have been, and it caught up with me eventually. But like every few days or once a week or something, I'd get these big boxes from Deep Discount that have a ton of movies in there. And Steve says I'm crazier than he was. I was spending an ungodly amount of money. And, if you use credit cards, you're spending money you really don't have. So, am I telling people to use a credit card to get stuff? No, I'm not. Don't do that. Um, but so I moved on from that and started getting like, I guess what you would call action figures or just figures. Um, I would get these things from Screen Factory. In fact, I've got one of them over here that I can show you guys. I should have gotten out more things. Oh, I'm getting old, folks. Um, but this is one I can grab real quickly. This is the miner from My Bloody Valentine. I think Steve may have gotten me this one though, but I have bought the Driller Killer, and I got the two Silent Night, Deadly Night, uh, the two Santa Claus killers. Like I said, I've got the Driller Killer, Russ Thorn. Um, and so, I got into collecting a few of those. I know some people they're hardcore about getting those figures and things like that. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But I think I've dipped my hand into so many pots that I can't get everything that comes out. I wish that I could, but number one, I don't have the money to do that. Number two, I don't have the room for all that stuff. Um, Something that I've started collecting here recently, and again, I don't get every one of them. I get ones that I really, really want. And all of us are probably getting ripped off that do this, is these special popcorn buckets. And I doubt very seriously anybody puts popcorn in these damn popcorn buckets. But I got one for the monkey, and I also have one when the new one of the newer Scream movies came out. And Steve, he has one back there of shoot, I can't remember what it is now, but he does have the Terrifier 3 one as well. He has Art the Clown dressed as a very gory Santa Claus. So that's something kind of, in the last couple of years or so that has gotten really big. I'm trying to, lunch boxes, horror lunch boxes, and they weren't like the classic lunch boxes. They were a little bit smaller. But I got a couple of like Evil Dead ones because, as y'all know, Evil Dead is my favorite horror movie. Horror soundtracks on vinyl in the last few years. Something that I have, jumped on the bandwagon with that. There's just so much like horror t-shirts. I mean, I've still got horror t-shirts that Mom says, Dana, well, I think I have, unless I got them all last time. But she kept telling me there for a while after I, got married, moved out and got married. She said, Dana, I found a bunch of your horror t-shirts. I said, oh, really? And I kept meaning to get them. And I think I finally did get them, actually. But there are literally so many different factions of horror collecting, a lot of which I probably haven't even begun to dip into, right? And Steve's probably profoundly thankful that I have not. And so I'm probably, because guys and gals, I'm going to start talking in circles. So I see 3 people in here, and I know Gory Tiger said what's up in the chat and stuff like that. But I don't really want to start to bore people. So I'm probably going to cut it off here in just a few minutes. But I did want to open it up a little bit. If there's anybody that wants to come in the chat and mention something, maybe something I haven't touched on. And like I said, it doesn't have to be horror. If you are, and I'm not trying to be funny here. If you like to collect stamps or marbles I mean, you can collect just about anything. Hey, Stephen, you said that's right. I need to find horror t-shirts. I probably wouldn't have much room for horror figures, though. I wish I did. Yeah, I don't have nearly the room that I would like to have, or I would probably have a ton more of the horror figures around here. I would probably have more horror vinyl, probably have more horror t-shirts, but now that I have my own t-shirt press, I make designs for myself and for hopefully for people to buy. You doing good, Stephen? But space becomes a really big issue in any type of collecting. And the more you collect, the more you want to collect, and the smaller the space in your house becomes, right? And for you guys and gals that live in or apartment living, or if you live in a tiny house, I don't know. I don't know how you're able to collect anything really, because Steve watches these. My husband Steve, he watches a lot of this stuff on people living out of RVs, people living in tiny houses, and I'm like, I don't know, I couldn't do it. Stephen, you say, yeah, I'm just at work tonight. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not. I work from home, which theoretically I could work all night if I wanted to, but I don't want to. Right? I want to have some me time as well. So, um, but um, I think what I will do is try to tie this one up because I've been on here almost an hour. And, for some of these things, an hour, 45 minutes to an hour or something like that seems like a good time frame. And perhaps I'll do a second one of these. And maybe Chris will get to join me at that point in time. Because, like I said, Chris is I consider him a connoisseur of all things collecting, not just horror. But I would love to have Chris, maybe show some things on the stream and stuff like that. So perhaps I can do a second one of these, and we can, get even more in depth, and maybe some more of you guys and gals will want to come on live on the stream, or maybe just get in the chat and just talk. Good night, Stephen. I hope you come back. I know definitely I'll be having a stream Thursday night, they're all messed up at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So if you feel so inclined and you're able to, I'd love to see you in here again. But thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. But before I tie everything all up with a nice, neat little bow, I want to remind everybody that there are a lot of different ways that you can support me in the channel. And there are several of them that won't cost you a dime. I love it that people join the channel. I love it that they join my Patreon. I love it when people give super chats and super thanks and all that stuff. I love it all, and I appreciate you all. But I also understand that not everybody has the ways and means to be able to be, handing out money willy-nilly left and right to everybody that has a channel on YouTube. I fully understand that. So there are several different ways that you can support me in the channel. It won't cost you a dime. And you may say, how, pray tell? Tell me how, Dana. How can I support you in your channel and it won't cost me anything? Well, one of the ways is by subscribing to the channel. If you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out and you haven't subscribed, why not? It's free. It's absolutely free. And I don't have to know. Nobody else has to know. You can even be an anonymous subscriber. There's a way to do that, right? And I promise, if you subscribe to the channel, I'm not going to try to come minister to you. I'm not going to try to sell you candy bars and cookies. I promise I will not do that. And you can feel free to be a subscriber as long as you want to be. That's something I never understood, why people just up and unsubscribe from somebody. Most people don't even think about it again. But, unless somebody's really pissed you off, I don't know why you would just up and unsubscribe. Maybe it's a spring cleaning thing. I don't know. But you can subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the content that I'm putting out. You can like videos and streams that you particularly enjoyed. And you can also share with friends and family members that you think might enjoy the content I'm putting out. And that costs you nothing. That costs them nothing, right? And these are all the ways that you can support me in the channel without it costing you one dime. Okay? So I just wanted to get that little spiel out of the way. So I don't know, again, I don't know for sure if I'm going to do anything tomorrow night, but Thursday night definitely should be doing. They're all messed up. Going to be talking about the kills and a couple more horror films from the early 70s. We're into the 70s. We're going to go clear through the 80s with this. And as always, I'm off like a dirty shirt. This shirt ain't dirty, but I'm off like one. And I want to remind everybody, as I always do before I get off of here for the night, to be kind to one another and blaze that trail. Have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday night, folks. Blast some Aussie. Live the Aussie way. And how, pray tell, do you do that? Well, by always living in the present and pushing into the future. Don't stay in the past, folks, and don't ever give up on your dreams. I love all you guys, and I'll see you next time.